We are back. Sam Seder on the Majority Report on the phone. It is a pleasure to welcome back, I think, if I'm not mistaken, to the program, Julia Ioffe. She is a staff writer at The Atlantic covering foreign policy and politics. Julia, welcome, I think, back to the program.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So you have this cover piece in The Atlantic entitled "What Putin Really Wants." And it really it's a fascinating look into how what Russia did came about and what the context was. But let's start with what did Russia do in the context of our 2016 election?
So this stuff is pretty well established. We know that Russia hacked the servers of the Democratic National Committee and the DCCC, which is tasked with electing Democrats to Congress. And then it leaked that information through WikiLeaks, through various other outlets that were either set up directly by the Russian secret services or leaked to kind of willing participants. And they also created Twitter bots, Facebook ads, all aimed to kind of set chaos and dissent and to amplify American political tensions and racial tensions, etc. They also scanned and probed the voting infrastructure and voter rolls in numerous states, about just under 24 states. And it's still unclear, and it will always be unclear. I think it's kind of impossible to gauge whether they swung the election or not. Personally, I think they were working on the margins, but it's still kind of unprecedented. Russia has never really done anything this active in our elections before. They've always, as one of my sources told me, have kind of nibbled around the edges of our elections, but they've never decided to go all in the way they did in 2016.
And I mean, the piece outlines the sort of there's a quality of like, holy crap, we can't believe that it worked out that way. A quality to their response. But before we get there, why did they? At what level was this decision made to sort of upgrade their participation in our election, and what was the impetus for that?
So it seems like the decision came from the very, very top, that is Vladimir Putin. But I think what gets lost on Americans is, we tend to think of, much like Russians do, Americans think that the rest of the world functions just like America. But the way that power is delegated and decisions get implemented in Russia is different. So what happens is Putin gives a signal, but it's generally a pretty vague signal. It's very important for him to have built-in plausible deniability, and there's a lot of stuff he doesn't know. And the other difference is that it's not all coordinated across various agencies and ministries in Russia the way it is in the U.S. So you have certain groups duplicating each other's work without even knowing it. So, for example, there were, in the DNC servers, they found two Russian, the footprints of two Russian government hackers. One was from the FSB, one was probably from the GRU, and the two hackers didn't know about the other Russian hackers. They were duplicating each other's work without realizing that the other one was there. This kind of competitive dog-eat-dog approach is not something we see, for example, in the American intelligence community. So it was very kind of ad hoc and, as one of my sources said, throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what would stick. But the command did come from the very top. And the impetus for it was in part to show that not only America can meddle in the internal political processes of other countries, that there was more than one regime change racket in town. And the other was to retaliate for the release of the Panama Papers. If you recall, the Panama Papers was a trove of documents from a Panamanian law firm, which is basically a tax haven, where a lot of rich people government figures from all over the world stashed their often ill-gotten gains, and Putin and his family and people close to him were very much implicated. They were very upset about that, and they think that the CIA did that, which they didn't. It was it was a bunch of independent journalists digging this up.
So, all right. So, there's two things. I mean, first off, the idea of the way that Putin would order something like this really feels like an episode of The Sopranos, where, Tony sits back and just says, like, it would be really nice if that guy was gone. And two different captains say, like, oh, I'm going to get in good graces with this guy and I'm going to take care of it. I mean, is that sort of like...
Exactly.
Go ahead.
That's exactly right. So I think that people tend to think of the Americans when they think about Russia, the show, I mean.
Right.
But really, I think the best show that would help you understand how Russia works is The Sopranos. It is very much, a lot of the people there come from that underworld. A lot of the people in charge have either come from that underworld or have intimate experience with it because of their experiences in the 90s in government and in business. And it is very much this kind of mafia-esque way of running things. It's about family, it's about kind of dissipated control, it's about plausible deniability, but that's pretty much exactly how it works. And the problem with that is that once your capos decide to get in your good graces, they have underlings who want to get in your good graces, and they have underlings who want to get in their good graces. And at some point, the system becomes kind of hard to maneuver and hard to stop once it starts rolling, because it's a giant, giant bureaucracy, pretty violent bureaucracy and corrupt bureaucracy, and it becomes very hard to control.
Hi, folks. Sam Seder here. We still need your help on our Patreon page. YouTube ads have come back, but not nearly as much as we had before. So if you can help us out, any little bit helps. Head over to our Patreon page right at this URL, and you'll help us keep helping you by making videos